Hi, and welcome to the episode 3 of Sounds Like Schmidt. We have on our episode Dr. Tiffany Keenan. As a young girl, she dreamt of the stars and the cosmos, wanting to become an astronaut. But at 15, she had corrective surgery for scoliosis. Like myself at the age of 15, I also had my own major medical concerns, which helped shape my life. But like most high performers, Dr. Tiffany Keenan was able to turn a pain into a gain. And inspired by her attending physician, she was able to get back out on the field. Life's field. The rugby field, to be exact, as she played during her university days. Getting her Bachelor of Arts at McGill University in Nutritional Science, she then went on to get her doctorate at Memorial and ended up doing her residency at Queen's University. And she's gone on to become a family doctor in Miramichi, New Brunswick for 20 years now. But she doesn't really come alive until she's a cowboy riding in on her crazy bronco horse, self-proclaimed the best caricature to explain the attitude in the life of an emergency physician, which she has also been now for just over 20 years. So we dive into some alarming trends that we see in modern medicine in our healthcare system today. Numero uno, what's between the ears? And most of us don't know there's a problem there. But then we quickly pivot into what we do know about, the problems that we help create, the stuff that goes in our mouths. And no, I'm not talking about drugs, though off camera, Dr. Keenan did give me some alarming statistics that she has seen in her operating room as an emergency physician. No, I'm talking about what's getting eaten. I'm talking about what's for dinner, hun. We're talking about our food. We rewind the clocks and look at a brief history of the diet heart hypothesis, popular in the 1960s, and then its major implications and ramifications it's had on our current lives today. This is when the world decided that fat was the enemy, and we substitute it with now public enemy number 1, the white devil, sugar. After our history lesson, we take a ride on the magical school bus with Miss Frizzle, as we follow what we ate for dinner down into our bellies, our guts. Did you know that we have over 100 trillion living bacteria organisms in our stomachs? 100 trillion. That's more than stars in the sky and more than human cells we have in our bodies, including your brain, as well as its host to 80% of where your immune system lives. It controls neurotransmitters, it regulates hormone balance, and it's the gatekeeper for the inflammation response. In the last 10 years, it's turned modern medicine on its head and is now at the forefront of medicine and science, giving our guts the nickname the second brain and a whole new meaning to following your gut instincts. After a brief stop in our guts, we hop back on the magical school bus and finish our destination where all our food ends up, coming out our schmitter. That's right, Dr. Keenan throws us a curveball and we end up talking about America's poop banks and poppin' poop pills. Which direction does the poop pill go? You'll have to watch or listen to find out. And that's right, dressing room amigos, it only took me to interview number 2 to start talking about butt stuff on Sounds Like Schmidt. See what I did there? So after we finish up talking about how we all suck at eating food, her and I nerd out on our love for personal development. See, Tiffany and I met a year and a half back in Toronto at a Help Me conference, a self-help conference. Both from being from New Brunswick in the big city, she and I quickly bonded and compared notes of our favorite Robins, both Tony Robbins and Robin Sharma. So sit back, relax, throw the headphones on, watch or listen to episode number 3, talking gut health and our second brains with Dr. Tiffany Keenan. That was a simple little thing where it was just like, oh my gosh, like the amount of time and energy, and then we filmed the day we filmed Limitless, or like the last, like all the chunks that I needed a quote unquote cameraman. oh, we were doing a drone shot and, oh, we were in a certain area and needed to download this and, restrictions and and so what could have easily turned into a big setback because, I gathered actors and things came together and you kind of get 2 shots in and then it's all falling apart. It doesn't really fall apart around you. There's at least a solution. So there's...
when people know their stuff.
Yeah.
It does, in the end, you see why you pay for people that know their stuff. Like, people ask me questions and I see them going and buying this vitamin. I don't always comment, but it's like, if you just went to the source, you could save yourself so much time, which it is. Like, I learned with this virtual assistant, I was like, I could get this person locally, but they, I'd have to teach them. And this girl is like, she loves health and nutrition and had gut issues and has beautiful skin. And she, she's the go-to and her friends for all the nutrition advice. Right. And I'm like, you're just like, she loves Canva and all these things. Like, finding someone that already knows it, even if you pay them extra money, it's like, takes the weight off,
Well, the 2 things I think of is Robin's comment always about cost versus value, right? Value pays. Cost is an expense. So which way are you looking at it? And then just for some odd reason, going into the film, and I'm interested in this, there's part of me that it's like, well, if you're not starting at ground zero and learning all that, you're not. Are you cheating? If you're going in hot? There's a bit of that, or at least for me, it's like I'm not. I'm not cheating, I guess, is not that's the best word, but that's my quick way of trying to describe what I'm saying. But there was a situation during the film in Limitless. I was like Friday at 10 o'clock at night, and I'm trying to edit something. And I'm like, I do not know what I'm doing here. Am I going to waste my next...
You did the editing? Or?
I was trying to do stuff, right? I was trying to... And the whole minimalism thing and Robin's thing, you got to be good at 5 things. Everything else, let someone else be good at.
Oh, I know. My learning lessons have been up there too with trying to do things like, I know how to use iMovie and this kind of stuff, which I shouldn't have to, but anyway, we learn.
Well, it's good to, you need to have that. It's the entrepreneurial, being able to have a finger in every little, just enough so that you can ask the right questions. And but thank you very much we're on. Okay. we're rolling. So thank you very much for being on the show, on the podcast. I've been nipping at your heels for a little while. When was it that we met up at the library? Because that's when we first chatted about doing a podcast episode. And I
think it was around Christmas, just before Christmas, maybe.
Yeah. It was. Yeah, it just might have been just post. Because I think I might have came back from the Titan Summit, and so anyway, because we threw the photo out on the group and everything. So now, so you were kind of who I hope to have as my first guest. So I've filmed one episode with my friend Phil, which we kind of did this 5 a.m. rise at 5 challenge, this personal development kind of thing. But I always kind of, months ago when we met, I was like, oh, Dr. Tiffany, you should be a great first guest. So I didn't yet know the name, and now we know the name. So you're kind of like the first guest. So you're first guest on Sounds Like Schmidt. That's the podcast name. I'm going to double down on I'm really going to lean into the last name there. So welcome, and thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure, and I'm so excited for you, Ben, to get everything started. This is wonderful, and I'm so happy to be here to share some knowledge.
Yeah, well, knowledge you definitely have. So the viewers have a little bit of an intro as to who you are. I'm going to sales pitch you up at the beginning, cut a little intro, give the backstory, your education and such. But really, let's just kind of start. You've been a family doctor and an emergency doctor for the last 20 years, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right.
Yeah, and we're here in the east coast of Canada. So predominantly in New Brunswick. Is that for the most part you've been practicing as a lawyer or a lawyer as a doctor?
Yeah, well, sometimes I feel like it's more like law. But yeah, I've been here for the majority of my time in the East Coast. I did spend 4.5 years in Bermuda. And I worked in Northern Ontario, like every Canadian should.
Right.
And the true North, I guess, for a year. That was a lot of fun as well. Right. But I've been back here in the East Coast for about 6 years now.
6 years, okay. And you were in Bermuda for a short period of time were you a family doctor or an emergency doctor there?
Yeah, I did emergency room medicine in Bermuda, and I did some family practice work as well. Okay. I guess the majority of my career's been in emerge, and then kind of dabbling more in the family practice end of things.
Right. So that's an emergency doctor. You must see it all, really. Like it's high stress, rewarding.
Yeah, all of those things. In emerge, the one thing you realize, I've been at this 20 or 22 years since I actually became an MD.
Right.
And I still see new things all the time.
Right.
And that's the amazing thing with medicine. And it's funny because when people go to medical school, they have these little caricatures and they kind of design these, caricatures. And so with an ER doc, we are the cowboys. So we're the cowboys. We like to ride the broncos or whatever, these crazy horses, because we have to be ready for chaos and for anything that's coming in the door. And that's what I realize it's been like. It's just that it's always being prepared. The stress for sure. Like I think in the first 10 years, you handle things differently as you get a little bit older. The stress takes on a different kind of turn as you get a little bit older. But it's wonderful. It's very rewarding being an ER doc. But I think that there's so much to offer people now, and medicine has shifted a lot. So we've gone really from acute illness, accidents and cuts and infections. And now the emergency room department, becomes chronic disease. Lifestyle issues, addictions, mental health. So it's really taken a turn. And so for me as a physician, I see my career kind of changing shape a little bit too.
So is that something that you've noticed in the last 20 years? Like when you first started to now, is it a big change from then? Yeah,
most definitely. Even the last 5 years, I would say.
Wow.
In terms of addictions and mental health.
Wow.
When I started medicine, I would never see a 15-year-old teenager on an antidepressant.
Right.
And that's probably been the last 10 years.
Wow.
And we can just kind of see society shifting more in general. We know that, before COVID, that the World Health Organization predicted that mental health illness would be the number one sickness of 2020.
Right. And maybe still would end up being so after this is all said and done. But that's another topic. Real quickly, just when and where did you realize that doctor was for you? Your Bachelor of Science is in Nutritional Science, if I'm not mistaken. So, when did doctor get on your radar as a child or a young teen? Well,
I actually always wanted to be an astronaut.
Hey,
Seriously,
okay.
I wanted to be up there, in the stars.
Yeah.
But when I was 14, I found out I had scoliosis, which is a curvature of the spine.
Okay.
And I needed to have surgery. So I need to have a rod inserted in my spine.
Okay.
And I knew that I probably wouldn't be able to handle the G-forces. Like they told me, after this, you should never fall off a horse or never parachute or play sports. But I played rugby in university and I'm still here. But I had my operation. And at that time, then I said, my doctor was wonderful. I was at the Children's Hospital in Halifax, Nova Scotia, the IWK. And I said, how can I help people? And I said, this is the way that I want to help people. Wow. And that's when I really decided that medicine was my route when I was 15 when I had the surgery.
Well, when we first met, family doctor, emergency doctor, a lot of my questions will kind of be rooted in nutrition. So when I saw that on your CV, I was like, hey, we got the right one here. So that's excellent. So, and I noticed as well, we talked about as well, you've started a foundation in Haiti back in 2006, I believe it was. What's your foundation, Sustainable Care in Haiti? How did you end up there, and why has that been something that you've founded and kept going for the last 14 years?
So I started the program in Haiti because I always wanted to do some type of development work. Mm-hmm. And I traveled to Haiti and to Congo actually in the same year. Okay. And I realized that you don't have to go to Africa to find people that are in need. Mm. And so I joined actually an organization from Fredericton, New Brunswick, that was going down doing rehab medicine, Dr. Colleen O'Connell. And I worked in Port-au-Prince, and then we traveled to a small town in the north. And I realized that primary care was in desperate need in the country. So I took a group of Miramichiers down, and within 2 years, we had a small little, country clinic built. And the clinic kept in operation for over 14 years.
Wow. That's really fantastic. Shaped a lot of lives, I'm sure. Yeah. So I guess I want to just transition a little bit. We kind of got an idea of who you are and why we're listening to you, because you have this wealth of knowledge in the medical world, rooted in nutrition. So personally, I'm kind of in a phase of my life going from my youth to my wisdom, not old yet. But health is now, I've always kind of put the money first, and there's a quote, Robin says it a lot, Robin Sharma, health is the crown on a healthy man's head that only the ill person can see. And that's something that you can have all the wealth in the world, but you'll trade it all for one more good day of health if you lose it. So I'm going into that world. So starting my health journey, I don't necessarily have, say, conditions or anything like that per se. So the general individual that wants to know where their baseline is, like where do we go, blood test, or where do we have to go to say this is where you are, and what markers are we looking for to say, are we healthy? Are we not healthy? This is where we need to go. Can you speak to that?
Sure. So number one, I think many people, when they come to the office, if you actually spoke with them, many people can give you the indication, because people know, if they are healthy or not. If you are not exercising, and if you're going out to eat food, then you're thinking, I know I have something to work on. But what I look at, number one, is your basics, our vitals, right? So you look at your blood pressure. It really can be a good indicator of what's going on in the body. So that's a simple test. You look at the height, weight, and waist ratio. So those are great markers, because you can clearly tell if someone, a BMI, body mass index, is a general term, but at least it can get you in a ballpark as to look at someone's weight status.
Right.
But even more so now, we look at abdominal circumference, or your waist circumference, because we know that abdominal fat is associated with a higher level of diseases. So those are simple markers that you can do in the office. And then we get into some basic blood test. So, when we're trained, really, most people would say, well, I went to my doctor and I got my cholesterol done and my blood work and everything is good. And so, number one, when I work with patients, I say, what is good and what is good enough? And you really need to understand what all those numbers mean. Right. So some key tests that I do with patients when they come in. So one is a basic blood count. So you're looking at your iron level, your hemoglobin, because that gives you a reflection of your iron stores. Your white blood cell count, which gives you an idea of your inflammation and infections.
So white blood cell count, that's the indicator for if you have high inflammation, which if I'm not mistaken, that's kind of one of the broad indicators of general disease. Like it's kind of like the first indicator of most diseases, if that, am I not mistaken?
So white blood cell count is the more general indicator that people would do, but the more specific indicator would be what's called a CRP, which many people, especially in Canada, don't have done. Okay. So it's called C-reactive protein, and that one really specifically tells you when there's inflammation. Okay. White blood cell count can be up with inflammation, but infection as well. But CRP is much more specific. And I still remember reading about this in my obesity journals a few years ago, and it's still not a test that's done on many individuals. So that's another, but it's a baseline one people can get done. And then, of course, the cholesterol. That's what everybody thinks of. But really, within the cholesterol panel, it's not just one number. Often people quote me, well, my cholesterol was 6. How was that, doctor? I'm like, one individual number doesn't mean as much. It's a reflection of the total amount. Mm-hmm. Your triglycerides, which are the fats in your blood, your HDL, which is the good cholesterol that can compensate for the bad cholesterol that's circulating. Right. But the other key number is what's called an A1C, a hemoglobin A1C. So this is a marker of diabetes and prediabetes. Okay. And next to mental illness, if I could say that there's one more disease that's epidemic in our country and across the world, is diabetes and prediabetes.
Really? Okay.
And that's a simple test that's done. All of these tests are covered, within Canada or any kind of basic health plan. And those numbers can actually give you a very good starting point as to what's going on in your body.
So just family doctor.
Family doctor. Now, but are they commonly done? I would say no. Cholesterol profile, of course, would be. An A1C number, I encourage patients to ask for that more and more from their family doctor.
Right.
But those ones are the basic panel to get you started.
Okay. So, because I asked about inflammation, that's the general, that's usually one of the first indicators. Public enemy number one, sugar? Is that it?
Sugar.
Right. Now, is that white table sugar, the devil, or is that all simple carbohydrates that we need to be just because it's simple, easier, quicker for the body to absorb, and our insulin's not reacting as quickly, so then we have to flood. I'm just learning all this. So, is it sugar? Is it all carbs? Everybody carbs, the ketogenic diet. So, can you speak to if there was one or two things that most people have in their diet that maybe they should be cautious of? What would you say those one or two things would be?
So refined sugars and processed sugars and processed foods. Difference?
Processed meaning?
So any type of processed food, packaging, kind of the rule is, if it comes from a plant or if it came from a plant, it was produced in a plant, don't eat it. But if it came from a plant and grew in the ground, then you can eat those types of plants. As soon as you take a food and begin to process it, that's where the trouble sets in. So, if we look at, natural cane sugar,
right.
If that's what you ate, but you had a really good balanced diet in terms of you didn't have other processed foods, you'd probably be doing okay.
Right.
But as soon as we take that cane sugar, we break it down. As soon as we add in things like high fructose corn syrup that we get, so we basically take corn, we process that down. When we take seed oils, for example, canola oil, when we have to take that and we process it by squeezing it at high temperatures to get the oil out. So it's in the product of processing and refining, that's where the problem comes. So that's why, so many people think health and nutrition has to be really, they say it's so difficult and complicated. And I say, eat whole food. If you eat whole food in its raw form, you're going to stay away from the packaging, because along with the packaging, other than refining, comes preservatives, additives to keep it on that shelf so that it can last there for months at a time. Like, how can Wonder Bread really sit on the countertop and not go moldy? Grandma's bread would start to go bad, right? So all those additives and chemicals. So whole foods. So avoid refined, stick with whole foods, and stick with foods as best as you can that are organic in nature and animals that are raised in some type of sustainable way.
Okay. So I've read a couple books, not very well versed in this, but from my understanding in the history of, our food industry, I don't know, maybe around the 60s, post World War II, the heart diet, is that the heart diet? So dietary fat had kind of become public enemy number one. And very lesser was, it might be the sugar. And we went with the dietary fat. And so, if I'm not mistaken, that's when we brought in all these extra sugars and brought in the high fructose corn syrup for additives and to get that flavor that we're now missing. You've already kind of mentioned that, those are the public enemy number one, probably, the sugars. How do we go about this? It's so ambiguous right now, and always has been, in terms of when it comes to food. Are we vegan? Are we veggie? Are we paleo? Are we keto? So if we were to try to combat public enemy number one, sugar, I guess, what kind of a general, I don't want to say the word diet, but what kind of general practices would somebody want to implement into their healthy eating?
from the diets that I've seen before, including Mediterranean, which is one you didn't mention, right?
Yeah.
But when you look at the diets of the world, because there are a variety, there is not one that fits all. But again, it comes down to having smaller portions of food. So a less of a time window during the day when you eat them.
Intermittent fasting, right?
Right.
Okay, so let's come back to that. Okay.
And then it comes to having whole foods. So there is no one diet that fits all. I was at the Obesity Conference International last year in Nashville, and we had on the stage, emeritus professors. One was advocating a ketogenic diet. The other was advocating a vegan diet.
Kind of opposite, right?
Exact opposites. Okay. So what works and what works best? For many times with people, it's a diet that they're going to be able to stick with. If you don't like meat, then you're probably never going to force yourself to eat meat.
Right.
If you really hate vegetables, then it's a vegan diet is never going to work for you,
right.
And we have so much controversy, and I'm really just in the middle with patients.
Right.
So I say, what is it that you're eating now? Where do you think you can start? And then let's kind of build on that.
Right.
Because we have very many different cultural preferences, right? Religions of the world that people have different preferences,
right.
But also our body types too. Many people find out very quickly whether or not low carb or low fat works for them. I've done working groups with ketogenic diet, and many of those individuals, of course, they lose a lot of weight on a ketogenic diet, and they realize that when they start going back to carbohydrates again, that their body is going to gain the weight. Mm-hmm. We know in North America that First Nations, in Canada, our Indigenous population, as soon as they start to add a lot of carbohydrates to the diet, they're going to start to gain more weight. That comes because of the insulin resistance, but it's genetically programmed into them. So it really does depend. But I think all of us that would get up there and start talking about different diets of different types, we know that keeping food in its whole form as much as possible is number one, and minimizing the amounts of sugars that you have. People say to me when I ask about healthy eating, one of the things is, I eat lots of fruits, doctor. And through the years, I've come to term fruits. Fruit is God's candy. So fruit is still meant to be a treat.
Right.
And we can still overload ourselves with the good things.
Right.
So we do want to have balance in what we eat and in the form that it was put on the earth.
Yeah, I mean, God's candy has some fiber in there too, so it's the balance.
Right.
Well, I'd ask more about the ketogenic diet, but I feel like we've kind of touched base on most of that. So I kind of want to transition into an area that we've talked about in the past as well, and that's your gut biome. I'm really a fish out of water right now, but I have Crohn's disease, and so gut health is that's a term right now. That's one of the new terms. So, big question or general question. I hear that the gut is our second brain. Can you explain how that is? Why where that kind of new term, the second brain, is coming from with our gut, and where do you see gut health going in the medical world?
So gut health is a newer term. When I was in med school, it was never touched on.
Right.
But we definitely know of the gut-brain axis and that the connection. So we have actually more serotonin receptors. So serotonin is what makes us feel good when we have turkey dinner, right?
Right.
Tryptophan goes to serotonin. Serotonin makes us sleepy, but we feel really nice and happy. So those receptors, we have tons of them in our gut.
Right.
We have more than we actually have in our brain.
Right. It's like 100 trillion, or yeah.
There's a lot more than stars in the sky, maybe.
Yeah.
So when we start to think about what's going on, so where does the control come from? Is it the brain or is it the gut that's leading? And so now what it's pointing to is that it is the gut that is leading the way. And it's more, so it's the serotonin receptors, but it's also all those microbes that live in there. And it's amazing. It's like this sea of bacteria and fungi. And then these fungi even make this, like, there's a slimy layer that goes and coats all the inside of the gut. And so it's all of that that combines to make us feel good. And so much can happen. These bacteria, they can actually, they secrete different compounds. They can make us feel hungry. They can make us feel happy. They can make us feel sad. It will change the pH of the gut, because then you can get into conditions when the balance is off, a condition called leaky gut, which is where the walls of the intestine basically develop little holes so that food particles get into our body where they're not even supposed to be. So the body's kind of rejecting those food particles, inflammation sets in.
Right.
So that's leaky gut. And then we have now a condition called SIBO, or small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So what this is when the bacteria migrate their way up from the colon up into the smaller intestine. They're not supposed to be there, but they get brought on because of sugar, because of our poor dietary habits, because of stress as well, because stress really has a role to play with the gut. So then when that gets out of balance, then people are having gas and bloating and conditions called IBS, which really is more just, it should be termed dysbiosis of the gut. It's just that the gut is not in balance.
Right.
So this is all happening, and science is pointing more and more to what is causing the problem. So what are the really good ones? What are the ones we have to stay away from? We're still not there exactly yet to know which ones we want the most of, but that's what we're working on. But the greatest connection, I just have to tell you. Please. So a friend of mine is Valerie Taylor. So Val and I went to med school at Memorial University in Newfoundland. Okay. So Val's a psychiatrist now. She was working at Women's College Hospital in Toronto. Now she's at University of Calgary. So Val is doing a research on poop pills for anxiety.
Where do you put the poop pills? Do they go up or down?
They go up.
Okay. All right. Well, that's the better of the two.
Well, she was doing down. Sorry, they were doing down, and then they did up. So basically, what they're looking at, and just as the power when you say, "Where is the brain?" If you give someone a fecal transplant, so if I take healthy poop and put it into you by giving you an enema or injecting it into your rectum, that actually can repopulate your gut.
Okay, well, didn't expect this, but my cousin, the eldest and wisest of the Schmidts, Kyle, he had a friend had also Crohn's or some sort of colitis, and when his son was born, he collected the fecal from the young baby and put it with some solution or whatever, and did that, cleared his issues. That's what my cousin claims that's what it was. So that's in the realm of possibility. That's what people do now?
It is. So so there's a treatment, many people might have heard of C. diff or Clostridium difficile bacteria. It's a very severe intestinal bacteria that we see a lot more of now because of so many antibiotics. Right. The number one treatment for that is a stool transplant. And you can actually go to Toronto and get a stool transplant done. But in America, they have poop banks. So you can give, it's not bad if you're healthy, $25 for a bowel movement. And they store it, and then they make sure it's cleaned and tested and everything. Right. And people will go and they'll take that stool. They're getting stool transplants for autism, for Alzheimer's, and of course for Crohn's and colitis and C. difficile.
So that, maybe the testing points are at both ends, right?
Mouth and stool, actually. And there's a lot we know now about not only the gut microbiome, but the mouth microbiome. Okay. So when we look at something like Alzheimer's disease, they're actually starting to trace the bacteria that live in your mouth. And if those are out of balance, they're not sure exactly what's going on, if it's a brain directly going up. But so these microorganisms that live within us may have much more power over us than anything else that's going on.
Wow. Okay. All right. So, as almost obvious as it is to say right now, but is kind of gut health, for a long time, being healthy, I've always associated with look good naked, right? Don't want fat on the body. But now as we talk and as I've been thinking about it, like, isn't it kind of obvious that, it starts with your gut? When I don't feel well, I feel it in my gut. But that's kind of new in terms of how prevalent, people are focusing on gut health. So I guess is that where you would say people can start their health journey, is their gut? And how do we test our gut? How do we know if our gut is healthy? Can you speak to that?
Sure. Gut health is not something I learned much about in medical school, 6 years ago when I started. Really the last 10 years, but even for me, the last 6 years, we've been seeing that gut health is becoming the foremost of medicine.
Wow.
Initially people heard about probiotics, and then the talk was about leaky gut and then prebiotics. But now we know, just like we mentioned, all about the microbiome and what it does.
Right.
So how do you know if your gut is healthy? So number one, look at your bowel movements. We have them every day, right? So
I don't love.
So that's what I first tell people is, so what is it? How many bowel movements do you have a day? And what is the consistency?
So what do you want? Yeah.
So you're looking for, often 1 to 2 bowel movements that are snake-like. So a snake, it's fairly soft. It keeps its consistency. It kind of coils in the toilet. Mm-hmm. You're not looking for something that's, floaty, that big, like little rabbit pellets that are in the toilet. You're not looking for something that is just squirting out of you, right?
Or literally looks like what you ate yesterday or last
that's
night.
right. That's right. It should be, a brown color. It shouldn't have mucus in it. It shouldn't have undigested food bits, but it should look like a snake. So that's a question I ask people now when they come in, and so many times, because still the majority of my work is in the emergency room, and people are like, well, yeah, I go 4 or 5 times a day. Or some say, I only go, once every 4 or 5 days. And I've been like that for years. And I say, well, this is not healthy. And it's so funny, I think, our perception of what normal is. Mm-hmm. Well, I've just been like that, doctor. But this is where problems start, right?
Right.
Because if you're going too quickly, then number one, you're not absorbing your nutrients properly, right? Mm-hmm. If you're not going enough, then number one, the bowel's getting expanded. That's where we get into, and what stays in there actually can circulate around. So we're not
toxic.
The toxins, right? So the toxins aren't coming out. So both ends of the spectrum are just not normal. So when you're getting things right is that you're having that 1 to 2 soft bowel movements a day that aren't very painful, that aren't gassy, that aren't smelly. Mm-hmm. So it's a really good starting point for topics with patients.
So I'm pretty unhealthy. If we're going to use that as a straight barometer. Okay, so I'm not healthy. Where do I go to, I want to fix my gut. I want to fix my health. I come to somebody like yourself and say, I want to start this journey. Where do we start?
Okay. So for years, people wanted, number one, everyone wants to lose weight, if I can kind of go there. Yeah. That's often people's number one concern. Right. But what I realized through my studies and my research and working with patients is that if your gut is not working in good order, then you're going to struggle with weight loss. Mm-hmm. Because the gut being out of balance leads to things like it's the inflammation. Mm-hmm. If you're not absorbing nutrients properly, then the body's actually going to hold on to the nutrients because it's going to try to get them, and sometimes you'll gain weight. Right. So where do you begin? So number one is get rid of inflammatory foods. So what we do with functional medicine, which is a kind of a root cause medicine. There's a lot of doctors now, and I'm one of them. This is what we practice. So we look at the functions of the body. Mm-hmm. We don't use a pill for every ill. Mm-hmm. So we don't just Band-Aid things. We actually look at the root cause of medicine. So when it comes to the gut, we first reduce the toxins that we're putting in. So number one, we reduce gluten. We reduce sugar, we reduce dairy, because for many people, those can cause inflammation, they can cause soreness within the body. And then what we do is we start to reintroduce healthy whole foods that are that can be found that can help to nourish and to heal the body. We'll add in some supplements that can be nourishing and that can take the body above and beyond. And then we re-inoculate, so we give back those probiotics, prebiotics, the good healthy bacteria, and then the prebiotic, which is what the bacteria eats. So we kind of go on a little bit of a template of how we start to literally reset the gut.
And so this template, we're part of this community, and we have a mutual friend, Avni, and I know she had great success with your program, your gut health detox?
Gut health reset.
Gut health reset. Thank you. So did you just explain kind of the step 1 through 5? Did you just explain kind of the transition that a gut health reset in the journey that somebody's going to go through? And so how many weeks does that typically, and when can you kind of get back to, or do you ever get back to normal after you've done the reset? I guess, can you Avni, almost as an example, what kind of journey did a typical user of your program go through?
So it really depends on what the person's entry point is like, right? Because if someone is completely healthy and they just want to just have more energy, then three weeks or 21 days can really be a good reset for them. If someone has been on a lot of medications, if they have autoimmune disease, then that journey can be more like 3 months. So you really have to look at the baseline. And this is what, again, in functional medicine, we really look at individuals. And, I say now that I practice personalized lifestyle medicine because it is really unique to everyone. But we know that there is a bit of a template, okay? So the template kind of goes like this. So we get rid of sugar, we get rid of gluten, we get rid of dairy, and we get rid of grains. And I chose 21 days for the program because for many people, it is a good length of time. 21 days for anyone that has a sensitivity to gluten, because gluten can elicit an immune response. So many people know what a peanut allergy is like. Peanut allergy, you swell up as soon as you have peanuts.
Right.
But with gluten, actually, it can be a slower reaction. People get inflamed, they get sore, their joints, they get rashes. They don't always know it. So it can take a good, 2 to 3 weeks to get that out of the body to start to see the improvement. So and I also went with 21 days because we all know that it's little consistent results day by day that make the changes. I think Robin tells us it's 66 days, right?
Yeah, the research out of the University College of London. It's
right.
66 days now to form a habit. It's 50-50 every day.
Yeah. And so I go with 21, though. For many people, they see that as doable. I think a lot of times when we're trying to make lifestyle changes, we want to have something that is more achievable. And when I tell people they have to get rid of that plus coffee for 3 weeks,
Some people get rid of coffee on your program?
I advise people to get rid of coffee. And the reason for that, Ben, though, there is science.
Okay.
Because many people don't realize how much mold is in coffee. So coffee is brought over, the beans are brought, they're often stored in large storage bins, and it's a prime ground for mold to grow. And so a lot of people are sensitive, not to the coffee, it's the mold in the coffee.
Interesting.
And they don't know that till they remove it. So it's a 21-day journey. We go into it together. So a couple of years ago, I started working with patients in groups because, there's been lots of things written like the power of 8. We know that group work can be very beneficial, which is why things like Weight Watchers work, Right. This is why churches are good, community groups, because it's the support that you get from one another. So I do a 3-week program so everyone gets kind of a daily instructional video, and that's just kind of part of that daily motivation, right? Like we know that when we're in it together, there's others that, wow, like we feel that we have that incentive to go on a little bit more. So we basically get rid of those inflammatory foods, and then we start to introduce the good things back in again. So the prebiotics. So prebiotics are in foods like apples and onions and green bananas. So this is inulin. Inulin is a non-absorbable fiber. So that's like prebiotic. And then we have probiotics, which of course people can take as a supplement that you can purchase. But also we get probiotics from sauerkraut. We get it from kefir. We can get it from kimchi, things like kombucha. So when you have that combination together, then they're kind of growing and then they're resetting things on the inside of the gut. Now, some people do need more extra benefits, or they need extra supplements. We know that collagen and bone broth can be very healing for the gut, especially when people have advanced immune conditions. Things like aloe vera, it heals your skin, right, on the outside.
Right.
Well, remember, our gut is just our skin on the inside.
I remember you telling me that, and that was just so like, yeah.
Like, trace it. It goes from our skin to our lip, and then the lip is just continuing on, and then the anus is open again.
So rashes, except, when you see these signs on your skin, that might be there's something wrong with the gut.
There is something wrong with the gut.
There is something wrong with the gut.
And Ben, that's why for me, I was really convinced about doing the gut reset, and why I've kind of shifted one of my focus with patients, even for weight loss. You got to reset your gut. I developed a psoriasis on my elbows and knees, and I developed this a few years ago, and it's not normal for people to develop eczema and psoriasis late in life.
Right.
It's a sign of an inflammation in the body. When I did the gut health reset program, my skin cleared up and got better.
Well, I have a brother that has psoriasis, or is that what it's been? He was a young age when he was at McDonald's, and he started, and he's now 40 years old, and he still has it. At times, it's even worse. But he doesn't drink. Would be low sugar. So somebody that's tried it all, what would you say to someone that eats healthy, that doesn't drink, and has tried it all? Where do they start? Where they already feel like they've been on the journey?
I think many times people still do a piecemeal. And I mean, so they'll get rid of gluten, and then they'll get rid of dairy, and then they'll take a supplement, and then they'll go on a cleanse and go green shakes or something. But they didn't do it. There's a sequence and an order, right?
Okay.
Because so many things elicit that immune response, gluten and dairy in particular. So many people have sensitivities to those. And unless you go cold turkey, you're not giving your body the time to reset itself. And some people will have an extended immune balance. Like we talked about SIBO, like the small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And sometimes yeast and candida comes into that as well. So if those things aren't corrected, then the body's not going to get itself back into that state of restoration. Okay. So it's really important for people that want to work on their health is to go to a health practitioner that's that can really give you the information and guidance that you need. I know a lot of people now are into getting allergy tests done. And, I had an allergy test done too, at a naturopath clinic. And so they'll take a panel and they'll run it through. And it's like, you're allergic to corn and beans and this and that. And so you try to eliminate those things, but it doesn't work that way. We have to start by getting the body down to some very basic foods, putting in some supplements that are going to help it to heal, working on stress too, right? Because stress, like we said, the gut and the brain are connected. So if you're in a chronic state of stress, it's really hard for the gut to slow down and to heal itself. Okay. And so working with an individual on all those levels. So that's what I tell someone that's really, say they've been through it all before. It's, start with a good, 21 to 60 days. And then there's other customized tests that you can get too. We talked about the baselines, but then you can have comprehensive stool analysis done. You can have genetic analysis done to see maybe you're not processing things correctly. Right. And then look at other types of therapies, because there's, red light therapy and all kinds of things that can help the body to heal.
Right. So I want to transition a little bit. We've talked a lot about health and where somebody needs to go to start their health journey, and appreciate that. But your personalized lifestyle medicine, I kind of circled that, and that's an area that you're transitioning into, if I'm not mistaken, and that's a kind of maybe a term that you have for this industry of medical practitioners that aren't maybe practicing medicine but giving health advice. So maybe you can speak to that. And when we met in Toronto last year, I connected with her. We seemed to connect because we were on kind of this bit of a personal journey in our lives, kind of reshifting our focuses. And you've been on this kind of, and you've got a big change happening upcoming in a relatively short period of time. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is where are you shifting towards with your practice, your business, in the medical field right now?
So my shift, which has kind of taken over a couple of years now, nutrition and obesity and diabetes, is now going, yes, to personalized lifestyle medicine. So this is actually an institute in America, and we are medical doctors.
Oh, okay.
So we are medical doctors, but this is more the avenue that we're looking at, because we know that medicine is not about treating sickness. It's actually making people well.
Right.
So there's a difference, right?
Yeah.
And so we really want to focus on wellness.
Right.
And we also know it has to be individualized.
Right.
Because there's not one prescription for every individual.
Okay.
And I love this concept. And Ben, it's taken me from, like in 2012, I was burnt out. I really was in medicine. And then when I discovered that there were other people like me, other doctors that actually wanted to look at the root cause of diseases, that's why I did nutrition, because I always knew that nutrition was fundamental. Mm-hmm. I knew when I suffered burnout that, wow, mental health is so important. And so when I started making that transition, it's like, yes, this gives me like a new leash on medicine, to know that I'm not alone, mm-hmm. and that there's a lot of science that's being done. So Dr. Mark Hyman, who we both follow,
right.
He works at Cleveland Clinic. And so 2 years ago, he was appointed the head of functional medicine. And they actually did a large research study. And they know that functional medicine have much better longer term outcomes. And it actually can cost the healthcare system less. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, what a wonderful world to transition into.
Right.
So I'm going to take this transition. So it's a change for me, right? Most medical doctors in Canada, we're on Medicare. We get paid by the government. So this is branching out where patients have to pay me. They come to me as a client. Mm-hmm. Luckily, if I can say, but COVID has shifted a lot of the world, right?
Right.
And so now the transition to virtual is going to be much easier for me. Mm-hmm. So my workshop that I'm doing now on gut health, where I've launched that virtually, and I did one in the spring virtually, where we can get together. Right. So yeah, so it's exciting. I'm going to be moving to Bermuda. Mm-hmm. Which is where I used to live.
Right.
But the sunshine and vitamin D will be good for me. I love the beach and the water, but also it's going to give me the opportunity to continue to do family practice, but then to really develop my virtual health practice and personalized lifestyle medicine too.
Well, that's really quite exciting. We were chatting, I think maybe pretty close to the day where you thought I might be doing this. And I was just like, what do you mean might? This is force yourself to kind of go in and then enjoy the sun. So that's fantastic. So this transition, I'm sure there was a lot of, again, I don't want to say angst, or probably a lot of questions, right? Because again, you're shifting away from industry norms and stuff. And where we met at a Robin Sharma event, a personal development, self-help. Is there something wrong with you? I know there was something wrong with me, and that's what I was there. I needed some guidance in transitioning from where I was to where I want to be, business, entrepreneurial, but personal too. So what were you doing at the Robin Sharma event? Was it tied to what you're describing, this shift in business or personal?
I guess the shift had happened a few years ago, and Robin was it was really helping me. It was when I started reading Robin and watching his videos, right. It's like I really felt like there were more people like me out there.
Right.
Because sometimes it's pretty lonely when you think, I loved reading self-help books and personal development books.
Right.
But when you don't have a lot of other maybe friends that are into that sort of thing, you think, well, what's wrong?
What's wrong?
And so when we all met there at Robin's, it's like, wow, like there's a lot of us, it's okay. It's okay to be a little bit different.
Yeah.
And I guess I always knew in medicine that I was a little bit different in the way I approach things with patients. So that really helped push me. And it's so funny that you bring up Robin last year, because I had been looking at, goals and my goal planning. And for the past couple of years, I sit down at the solstices and equinox, and every quarter, I kind of look at my goals. And last year with Robin, he was really getting us to push us. And if you remember, there was an exercise we did. We had a white sheet of paper and he gave us crayons. And so we had to draw a diagram.
Mine's upstairs.
So I drew stick men, but on my diagram, because I've known for many years now that one of my goals in life is that I wanted to live in a tropical country, but I also love living in Canada, especially like this time of year, the fall. Right. I love winter and the snow. But last year, so I wrote one of my goals was to be in a tropical place, to be in the sunshine, to be able to have my family with me, playing down at the beach, And then I have that on my little sheet of paper. And then I have me sitting up in my room, and then I, with my computer, doing virtual work. And then I have a little circle where I'm doing, my group-based work.
Right.
And so Robin really, it was that visualization, Ben. And there's, we hear about that and people talk about visualize, but truly make it real. Like I stuck that on my wall.
Yeah.
I wasn't hiding it. I stuck it, and I stuck a picture of the beach I want to live on.
Right.
That's been sticking on my wall for 4 years. That's been getting embedded into my subconscious. And that's where I'm going back to next month. So I think we do need the dream, but we need to take the steps to move forward toward the dream. And we have to know that absolutely, and without a doubt in our mind, that dream is going to happen.
Right.
I think it's not a pie in the sky. It's like, this is what I want. This is what I am going to do, and be determined, and then work taking those baby steps every day. 21 days, 60 days, 90, 180, 365, a few years later, and then people will get at it.
It's, yeah. I don't want to verge too much dream and vision. I'm not really sure how I'd want to describe it. There is a difference between, wouldn't it be nice? And I guess I'll call it a goal. Like, you've had these goals. I really don't believe the brain is going to conceive a goal that it doesn't believe is possible. Like, once the brain and the heart, if the heart believes what the brain conceives, it will, but if the heart's not, then it's probably just this idea. So maybe tactically a little bit, because we're talking about Robin and you're transitioning, and were there some tactics that Robin gave that have helped you along this journey, like these small daily actions that lead to big results? What are they? For me, it was an early rising habit and his kind of victory hour, which exercise part of that aside, we don't really need to speak to that. I think a lot of people will understand that. But two of the things that came up for me were both meditation, which was new to me, heard about it a lot, and found benefits, as well as journaling. So I guess maybe I'm giving you the answer to the question, but Robin, did he have some tactics that stood out to you, if it is those or anything else that really stuck with you that helped you move that needle towards the new direction that you're in now?
I found that Robin packaged things together so well. Right. So for example, the 5 a.m. club, like, what a wonderful thing to start doing. Right. I'm an early riser. I love doing that. In 2012, when I got burnt out, I started meditating. And then the fact that Robin put it together, that the meditation, the exercise, and the journaling, which are all things that I did, but packaging that was wonderful. Right. I love that concept. I love Robin's concept of mindset, heart set, health set, and soul set. Because for me, through the years I've transitioned. I know it's a whole body approach to medicine. When we look at First Nations culture as well, where I've worked before, and we see that kind of circle or that wheel of life balance. Right. The other one is surrounding yourself with your dream team. Mm-hmm. And knowing that you can't do it all alone. Mm-hmm. So I love that. So, I've got I have a personal assistant, a new one. I have a personal trainer. I've got, my accountant, my massage therapist, my energy therapist, my esthetician. So it's kind of my dream team around me. Mm-hmm. And I love that Robin talks about, so as we start to, for me to make a transition like this, it's been so much easier. Things, when you do that, when you set the fundamentals, and I tell people that with their health too, when you get rooted, when you sleep well, you eat well, you poop well, you have good friends, and you play and have fun, then everything else, it's just stacked so much easier. Mm-hmm. So the transition for me now is actually going quite well because I had so many of those things in order.
You laid a lot of the foundation. Well, that kind of segues into one of my final questions that I have for you. I've got a few questions that I want to end the episodes with. And the first and foremost is, well, again, to tie it to Robin. Robin really kind of introduced me to the concept of the hero's journey, right? And that was something that really, when I lost my way and refound my way and chasing the dream, he had all these tactics, meditation and the dream team and journaling and a few others. But he got me on that. So I kind of want to ask you about your hero's journey, right? Because you're probably fairly comfortable. You've been a doctor for 20 plus years, yet you're moving to Bermuda. You're starting a new, well, I'll call it business, a new health-based business, when some people would be thinking, let's have a comfortable life at this point, comfortable life. So who are you trying to be, and what are you going to do?
So my gift on this planet is what I've looked at for myself is I know I have a healing ability. I'm a doctor, I'm a healer, I'm a teacher. That's why I've been put here. And my goal is to use my gifts as a healer to help others on their path.
Right.
So I know that this next step is just that next part of my journey. Mm-hmm. I won't be in the emergency bandaging people up, but that there's another road and another path for me to take.
Right.
So that, I guess, is who I am. And so wherever that journey leads me to next, I feel that this is part of the path. One of the things that has really helped me on the hero's journey is to know that the road shifts and it turns, and that there's a lot of peaks, there can be valleys, but the peaks will come back again. And one of the things that's happened through the years, is, you change jobs. Yeah, you get divorced. You lose friends, like there's death and dying. But then it's that ability to be resilient. And so that's one of the things I think that leads me forward too, is knowing that the shifting sands of time, mm-hmm. and knowing that life is impermanent. I know when I learned that principle, it opened a whole new avenue for me, because I thought that it was supposed to be, we just kind of get on this up, 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 up. Mm-hmm. And, I'm a doctor, I'm a perfectionist, I'm an A personality, all mm-hmm. that kind of stuff. So then when you fall off that horse, it's like, it's the end of your world. But, after you fall a few times and you realize, hey, I can get back up and I can be stronger and I can learn from what's happened. So this is that next stage of my journey.
Okay, well, I was going to ask you next what compels you, and with that impermanency, would you say that's or where's your drive come from? What compels you?
What compels me is just understanding, I think, that at one level that we are all the same and that we are all connected. And when that is the one fundamental principle, which I spent 10 days in a Buddhist monastery a couple of years ago, silent meditation. And on day 4,
10 days,
not speaking.
Wow.
And on day 4, we had to sit in posture. Like we meditated for 10 to 12 hours a day. Wow. And I remember I was so upset and I was in so much pain from sitting cross-legged on a floor. And then I said, I can do this, because your mind is much more powerful than the body. And I sat through that session, and then I just felt this connection to my body, but also to whatever we want to call universe, God, love, spirit, source. And it was then that I thought, this is what we are on the planet to be. We are spiritual beings on a physical or a human journey. That's truly what I believe, right. And not the other way around. And so that's what keeps me going, knowing that I'm here to serve, I'm here to love, and I'm here to be a light. And whatever form that's going to take. When I was younger, I thought, it's that great expression, I thought that I was just going to improve the world and I was going to change everybody. And now the older I get, I realize that the only person that I can change truly is me. But also I know that the stronger that I can grow myself, the greater that I can shine that light, that the stronger that I will be for others. Mm-hmm. For my role as a healer, for my role as a teacher. So the best I can do is to be the best person that I can be, and which is that body of wonderful, beautiful, light-based energy. And I think that's how we're all connected.
Well, that's the way you appear, and I'm sure that's the way you're going to come off on screen. It's been so amazing getting to know you, and our friendship's been growing. So I'm learning so much. I'm quite excited on a few of the other projects that we have going soon. But I want to wrap up So for the people that have been listening or may want to touch base with you, may be interested in your programs, how would you like to direct people to you?
Sure. Well, thanks again for having me on. It's been so wonderful. But for people to contact me, they can reach out. I'm most visible on Facebook, so just Dr. Tiffany Keenan, and Instagram as well. If anyone wants to email me, they can see me at drkeenan@mev2.ca, and they can also check out my YouTube channel. I've been trying to post a lot more videos. I have a few different series, including my 21-day gut health series. I have a 12-week group-based medical visit as well for patients.
Right.
So I hope people reach out and connect, and we'll move forward.
Absolutely. Well, all the links will be there. Thank you very much for being on the show, and we'll see you soon. Thank you very much for listening or watching to Sounds Like Schmidt. I hope you learned a whole heck of a lot with our guest, Dr. Tiffany Keenan. I know I did. I learned about my mental. I learned about my gut health, my second brain. And we started popping poop pills. No, we're not popping any poop pills. We're really excited with Dr. Tiffany Keenan because she's agreed to be season 2 of Rise at 5's resident doctor. So she's going to be taking us along this health journey process as I try to regain my youthful exuberance and as an older man. So I'm regaining my health. And so she's going to take us through the process of season 2 of Rise at 5. What's Rise at 5? What's season 2? Well, make sure you tune in to next episode as we continue the story of Rise at 5. We pick back up with our hero. Last time we left him, he was on rock bottom. Just picked himself up, dusted himself off, and had looked to the heavens above. And he saw his new mountain, his new journey, his new path. And his mentor had just revealed himself to him, Robin Sharma and the 5 a.m. Club. So watch as our hero tactfully goes about the process of implementing the early rising habit. Hint, doesn't take an overnight. It was 18 months to establish this habit. But learn all about it in the next episode of Sounds Like Schmidt. Again, thank you for listening or watching. We'll talk to you soon.